Part 1. There's a certain peace to asphalt beneath your wheels. Pre-dawn starts, diesel rumble in your bones, CB chatter crackling in the background like an old friend telling the same jokes you've heard 100 times before. Roadside diners where the eggs are rubbery, the coffee's burnt, but nobody cares because that's the charm. Mile markers ticking past like a metronome for men who measure time in odometer digits and fuel receipts. That was my world. Simple. Honest. Until the day it wasn't. My name's Michael Hayes. 43 years old. Long-haul trucker for nearly 2 decades. Owner-operator of a Peterbilt 389 I named Charlotte after my grandmother, the only woman I ever knew who kept promises without excuses. Back home in Oklahoma, I had a wife named Amy. We met when I was 25. She was 22, working at a diner where I'd grab breakfast before heading out on runs. She poured me coffee, flashed a grin that made me forget how bad the eggs were, and before I knew it, we were married. 12 years. That's how long we lasted. At least, that's what I told myself. Looking back now, it was probably less. Life on the road has a rhythm. Logbooks to keep you honest. Fuel stops to remind you how fast diesel can drain a wallet. 72-hour hauls that blur the lines between day and night. You get used to it. Some might say addicted. But home, that's supposed to be your still point. The place that doesn't change while you're out chasing paychecks. Only, it had changed. It started small. Amy joined a new gym. Nothing fancy, just one of those 24-hour spots by the strip mall. I want to feel healthier, she said. Look good for you. Sweet. Thoughtful. Or so I believed. Then came the texts. Messages popping up at strange hours from someone named Dispatch. At first, I didn't question it. She helped out part-time at the dispatch office where my hauls were coordinated. Maybe schedules changed. Maybe loads were shuffled. Trucking life is like that, fluid, unpredictable. But dispatch got chatty at 11:42 p.m. and again at 4:13 a.m. when no one sane was planning loads. And Amy started overdressing for errands. Lipstick for grocery runs. Heels to pick up dry cleaning. Tight jeans she hadn't worn since our first year of marriage. I chalked it up to a phase. People change, right? Maybe she just wanted to feel young again. I was on the road too much to notice the little things anymore. That's what I told myself. 2 weeks before everything shattered, I came home from a cross-country haul. Instead of the usual warm hug at the door, Amy greeted me with a distracted smile and a quick peck on the cheek. The sink's leaking again, she said, already walking away. Can you fix it tomorrow? No, I missed you. No, welcome home. Just a to-do list. That night in bed, I reached out to her. She shifted away, mumbling something about being exhausted. Exhausted. I knew that word too well. It was the trucker's curse. But now it wasn't my exhaustion that kept us apart. It was hers. The real gut punch came in the form of mileage reports. I keep track of my fuel card and odometer like any seasoned driver does. But twice in 1 month, the fuel statements didn't add up. Trucks she claimed were fueled during her dispatch shifts hadn't moved according to GPS logs. When I asked about it, she waved me off. Admin error. It happens. Except it didn't. Not in my business. Still, I held the line. Loyal to a fault. Until last Tuesday. I'd finished a short run from Dallas and thought I'd surprise her. Brought home flowers, not the kind from the truck stop, real ones from a florist. Roses and lilies, her favorites. As I turned into our driveway, I noticed another vehicle parked behind Amy's sedan. A silver SUV with out-of-state plates. Strange, but not alarming. Maybe a friend visiting. I grabbed the flowers and walked up the porch steps. The front door was unlocked. Habit. We never locked it when I was due home. I stepped inside, expecting the dogs to rush me like they always did. Silence. Just the low murmur of voices from the kitchen. I rounded the corner and froze. Amy sat at the kitchen table, back straight, hands folded like she was waiting for church to start. Across from her sat a man in a pressed blue shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow. Business casual. Mid-30s. Athletic. The kind of man who looked like he didn't know a fifth wheel from a flatbed. Her hand rested on his wrist. Intimate. Familiar. They both turned as I entered. The man's spoon hovered halfway to his mouth. Amy's face drained of color, lips parting in a silent gasp. Time stretched. The ticking wall clock grew louder than a Jake brake on a downgrade. I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I just stood there, holding the flowers like an idiot, watching them freeze in the kitchen light. No one spoke. I finally broke the silence. Didn't expect to find company. Amy opened her mouth, closed it again. The man set his spoon down with surgical care, like sudden movement might trigger an explosion. I dropped the flowers into the trash can. Watched the petals crumple. "Don't stop on my account," I said quietly. And I walked out. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. Didn't sleep at all. I sat in Charlotte's cab, the only space left that was mine and mine alone. The dogs curled up in the sleeper behind me, their loyalty unquestioned. I stared out at the empty street, at the SUV still parked in my driveway like a trespasser that hadn't yet been evicted. The cracks in my marriage weren't cracks anymore. They were canyons. And I knew, deep in my gut, this was just the beginning. Part 2. The morning after I found Amy and her guest frozen at the kitchen table, I didn't rage. I didn't confront. I drove. That's what truckers do. When the world spins out of control, we grab the wheel and move forward. But I didn't head for the highway. Not yet. I spent the day at a truck stop outside town, drinking bad coffee and watching semis pull in and out. Familiar. Predictable. Unlike what waited back home. By nightfall, I returned. The SUV was gone. Amy was in the living room pretending to read. She didn't mention what happened the night before. Neither did I. Not yet. But silence doesn't mean surrender. It means recon. I started noticing things. Small things. The kind that only look small until you add them up. Her phone never left her side now. Not at dinner. Not when folding laundry. Not even when she showered. Once or twice, I caught her flinching at notification sounds. Like they physically hurt. That wasn't Amy's usual way. She used to leave her phone on the counter, untouched for hours. Said the constant buzzing made her nervous. That was before. The first hard clue came in the form of a receipt. It fluttered out from her gym bag when she dropped it on the bed. She didn't notice. I did. A hotel stay. 2 nights. Out-of-town address. Room service for 2. The dates? They overlapped with the parent-teacher conference she told me about. Amy was a volunteer at the school sometimes, so it wasn't unusual for her to be involved. What was unusual was paying for a double suite, spa services, and valet parking while supposedly discussing kids' reading levels. I slipped the receipt into my wallet. My hands didn't even shake. Next came the scent. Amy's coffee mug, the one she always carried out to the porch in the mornings, reeked of a foreign aftershave. Spicy, musky, not a brand I recognized. I asked her about it casually. She laughed. "That's just from the new air freshener at the gym. They sprayed the locker room with some awful cologne stuff." I nodded. Said nothing. But the smell wasn't like any air freshener I'd ever encountered. It was expensive. The kind you find in boutique stores, not the local Walmart. I dug deeper. Quietly. That weekend, Amy left her laptop open in the kitchen. She'd forgotten to shut it before heading out for groceries. I wasn't proud, but I checked her email. Most messages were ordinary. School updates. Fitness newsletters. But one sender caught my eye. DT Logistics Solutions. Not a name I recognized from my routes. Opening the email chain, I found heavily coded language. Phrases like confirmed load movement and schedule flexibility approved. At first glance, trucking terms. But there were odd references to weekend flexibility, personal freight deliveries, and even a line that read, "Second key confirmed in sock drawer for emergency access." Second key. I remembered Amy mentioning, just 2 weeks prior, that she'd found an old spare key in her sock drawer. She'd made a joke about how forgetful we both were. I'd chuckled at the time. Now, it wasn't funny. I didn't confront her outright. Not yet. Instead, I mentioned the hotel receipt that had accidentally fallen out of her bag. Her eyes didn't widen. Her breathing didn't hitch. She was ready. "That was for a school committee event," she said smoothly. "I didn't tell you because I knew how stressed you were about money lately. The school reimbursed me. I just haven't turned in the paperwork yet." It was such a perfect lie, I almost admired it. When I hesitated, she pressed harder. "You're overtired, trucker," she said gently, laying a hand on my arm. "You've been working too hard. You need to trust me. You're imagining things." I looked at the hand on my sleeve. Soft fingers. Manicured nails. The same fingers that held another man's wrist at my kitchen table. Imagining things? No. I was seeing them. Finally. The last straw came when I stopped by the dispatch office unannounced. Wanted to verify a few things. Nothing major. Or so I told myself. But when I arrived, Amy wasn't there. Neither was her supposed supervisor, the same name that kept appearing in those cryptic emails. The clerk at the front desk looked confused. "She's been on extended leave for over a month." I stared at her. "No. She told me she's been covering extra shifts." The clerk shook her head. She hasn't been in. At all. That night, I sat in Charlotte's cab again. Engine off. Silence pressing down like a heavy tarp. I thought back over the last few weeks. The lies. The receipts. The second key. The scent. The fake emails. The dispatch cover story that wasn't. Amy wasn't just slipping away. She was orchestrating something. And it was worse than I ever imagined. Part 3. Some men lose their minds when they catch a cheater. Smash things. Shout. Get reckless. I did none of that. Instead, I got precise. A week after the revelation at the dispatch office, I installed a small dash cam inside Charlotte's cab. Not for the road. For surveillance. It wasn't my first rodeo with electronics. Truckers pick up a few things over the years: GPS routing, logbook audits, even some light hacking when dispatchers try to cheat your hours. Installing a discrete camera and a voice recorder in my own rig? Easy. Every conversation. Every movement. Every time Amy climbed into my cab to say goodbye or borrowed it for an errand, I'd know. At the same time, I slipped a GPS tracker into her sedan's rear panel. Bought it online. No subscriptions. No alerts. Completely silent. And I waited. It didn't take long. One Thursday morning, under the excuse of running volunteer errands, Amy took my truck to the mechanic while her sedan was acting up. I watched the GPS data like a hawk. She didn't go to the shop. Instead, she drove Charlotte past the city limits toward a way station off Highway 75. Odd place for personal business. My dash cam sent a ping to my phone. Motion detected. Later that night, after she returned, I retrieved the footage. There she was. Amy. Parked behind the way station where long haulers sometimes met to swap loads or swap favors. She stepped out, wearing the same blue blouse she'd told me was for school committee work. Moments later, the man from my kitchen, the one with the pressed shirt and the wrist she liked to touch, climbed into the passenger seat. He leaned toward her. No kiss. Nothing overt. But the body language? Intimate. Relaxed. Like this wasn't the first time. Amy handed him something. A white envelope. Thick. He smiled. They spoke for 20 minutes. Then he left. It wasn't physical betrayal. Not outright. But it was coordinated. Trusted. Personal. That was the first nail. The second came in numbers. Our joint bank account had always been straightforward. I deposited my hall pay. Amy transferred small amounts for groceries, utilities, gym memberships. But as I combed through recent statements, I noticed odd transactions, withdrawals, and transfers made in person at unfamiliar branches. Round numbers. Clean figures that don't match daily spending. With the help of a buddy from my old freight company, someone who now worked in financial forensics, I traced the patterns. Amy had opened 2 secondary accounts in the past year, one in her maiden name, another under a shell business called Silver Pine Logistics. No trucks, no routes, just a fake company with a real bank account. That explained the envelope. I checked the shell company's transactions. Thousands of dollars, our dollars, had been moved quietly out of our savings into Silver Pine, disguised as service payments and reimbursements. Clean. Professional. The kind of fraud people don't notice until it's too late. The third nail came through sound. One evening, while Amy was at her book club, I reviewed the voice recordings from the sleeper cab. At first, nothing unusual. Idle phone calls. Country music playing softly. Then, a conversation. Amy's voice. It's moving faster than I thought. He suspects but won't act. The man. Good. He'll stay distracted. The longer he's out on runs, the easier it gets. Amy, if I can push him into a few more routes this quarter, we can clear the last transfer without raising alarms. The man. And the house deed? Amy, I've drafted paperwork. Told him we need to restructure for tax purposes. Once he signs. The recording cut off as the ignition clicked. But it was enough. They weren't just betraying me emotionally. They were staging a financial ambush. Planning to take the house. The business assets. Maybe even run up debt in my name before leaving me bankrupt and broken. A second life. Second lies. Second chances for them. None for me. I sat in Charlotte's cab, staring at the dash cam monitor. My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. No rage. No screaming. Just cold. Steady. Fury. I started jotting down every mile Amy had lied about. Every dollar missing from our accounts. Every coded phrase from the voice logs. Not for a fight. For a reckoning. I wasn't going to let this road swallow me. I'd map out her downfall. Inch by inch. Mile by mile. Part 4. By the time July rolled around, I had enough evidence to destroy them both. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed precision, timing, and one more painful truth before I made my move. It came when I pulled my credit report. I wasn't looking for trouble, just reviewing everything before I closed the joint accounts. That's when I noticed 3 new credit lines opened in my name. Not small ones either. One was for a luxury pickup lease. Another was a revolving business card with a $20,000 limit. The third? A personal loan I'd never requested. The billing addresses were linked to Silver Pine Logistics. The shell company Amy and her dispatch manager had created was bleeding me dry before they even made their final exit. But the worst part wasn't the fraud itself. It was who helped them pull it off. My cousin, Evan. Childhood friend. Fellow trucker. The guy who'd stood beside me at my wedding. The one who called me brother, even though we weren't blood. His name was listed as a business associate on the credit applications. I called in a favor from a buddy who worked financial crimes for the state. He confirmed it. Evan had signed as a co-applicant on the business card and vouched for Silver Pine's legitimacy to the banks. That's why the approval sailed through. Family. The ultimate knife between the ribs. I didn't rage. Didn't call Evan. Didn't confront Amy. I played the part of the oblivious, overworked husband. Smiled when Amy asked me to take extra hauls. Nodded when Evan suggested we grab beers like old times. Meanwhile, I prepped my arsenal. Step 1. Lock down assets. I worked with my financial buddy and a bulldog of a divorce attorney. We froze the joint accounts, notified the banks about the fraudulent credit lines, and secured the title to Charlotte so no one could leverage her as collateral. I even pulled my truck insurance records to prove that, despite Amy's attempts, no secondary drivers were authorized on my rig. That mattered more than I realized at the time. Step 2. Forensic audit. My friend's contact in financial crimes ran a deep dive into Silver Pine Logistics. We traced every transfer, every withdrawal, every dollar laundered through Evan's personal accounts and back into shell investments connected to Amy's lover. It was a spider web, one they thought nobody would ever untangle. But I had the map now. Step 3. Plan the reveal. The annual Truckers Brotherhood Gala was 2 weeks out. Big event. Dinner, awards, charity auction. Amy had already RSVP'd on our behalf. She probably thought it was the perfect cover. Smile for the crowd. Shake hands. Meanwhile, the final steps of her financial ambush would click into place behind the scenes. Instead, I made it my battleground. The night of the gala, I wore my best suit. Clean-shaven. Polished boots. I kissed Amy's cheek like nothing was wrong. Looking forward to tonight, I said. She beamed, the perfect trucker's wife. Loyal. Supportive. Completely unaware the ground was about to collapse beneath her feet. When dinner wrapped and the awards began, I requested the mic. I was well respected. Quiet. Not the type to grandstand. So when I asked for a moment to share something personal, the host agreed without question. I started with a simple statement. Trust is the load-bearing beam of every road warrior's life. When it breaks, everything comes down. Then I connected my phone to the projector. First slide, dashcam photos. Amy and her lover behind the way station. The envelope exchange. The stolen moments of intimacy that weren't physical, but undeniable. Second slide, bank statements showing the transfers from our accounts into Silver Pine Logistics. Third slide, the fraudulent credit lines with Evan's signature prominently displayed. Fourth slide, audio clips from the sleeper cab. The planning, the manipulation, the contempt in their voices as they plotted to strip me of everything. The room went dead silent. Amy's face drained of color. Evan looked like he wanted to crawl under the banquet table. Her lover? He wasn't present. Coward didn't have the guts to show. I didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't accuse. Just facts, documents, evidence. When I finished, I said, I'll be filing criminal charges in the morning, against everyone involved. I've already secured my assets, and my lawyer will be in touch. I placed the mic down gently, walked off the stage, past the stunned faces, past Amy's trembling hands and Evan's slack jaw. I didn't look back, not once. By the time the sun rose the next day, my so-called family and the woman I once loved were already crumbling beneath the weight of their own schemes. Part 5. The night after the Truckers Brotherhood Gala, I didn't go home, didn't even drive past it. That house was just a carcass now for walls where loyalty had died. Instead, I checked into a roadside motel 30 miles outside town. For Pines Inn. The kind of place where the carpet was stiff with age and the flickering neon sign bled light through the cracked blinds. $50 a night. The kind of anonymity a man needs when everything he built has collapsed. I didn't bother unpacking. Just dropped my duffel in the corner, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the walls. No wedding photos. No home-cooked dinners. No dogs barking their greetings. Just silence. The kind of silence where a man rebuilds himself or breaks forever. By 5 a.m., I was out of the room. No alarm. Years of long hauls had trained my body to rise before the sun. I bought the cheapest black coffee from the motel vending machine. No cream. No sugar. Let it burn the back of my throat. Pain meant I was still alive. Then I drove to a gym that didn't advertise. No fancy machines. No televisions. Just iron, sweat, and the kind of men who understood that rebuilding wasn't pretty. I lifted until my muscles trembled, until the rage and sorrow bled out with every rep. Then I ran the treadmill. Not to escape. To charge headfirst into the next phase of my life. Day after day, this was my routine. Lift. Run. Plan. No fairy tale healing. No counseling sessions or inspirational quotes. Just discipline. Brutal, relentless discipline. The legal process moved slower than I wanted, but steady as a loaded flatbed crawling up a grade. Amy's accounts were frozen. Her lover's business seized. Evan's assets liquidated by court order. The fraudulent debts vanished once the banks realized they'd been duped. But money wasn't the point anymore. It was about making sure none of them could do this to anyone else. They thought they'd take my future. My freedom. My pride. Instead, I took theirs. 3 months passed. I moved into a small apartment near the freight yard. 1 bedroom. Mattress on the floor. A desk holding a laptop, legal documents, and a ledger where I tracked every court date, every judgment. No television. No distractions. At night, I slept under the hum of the ceiling fan, dreaming of empty highways and the hollow spaces where family used to be. Then came the final blow. The one betrayal I hadn't uncovered until it stared me in the face. Scott Reynolds. My best friend since high school. The man who pulled double shifts with me when we were young. Who stood beside me at my wedding. The one who sat across the table last Christmas, raising a beer to brothers forever. I'd trusted him with everything. Turned out, he'd been feeding Amy and her lover information for over a year. My haul schedules. Financial accounts. Even details about when I was most likely to be on the road or sleeping at the depot. For what? A slice of the stolen money. A few weekends in Vegas. Maybe a promise that he'd end up with my house when they were done gutting me. The evidence was all there in the financial audit. Small payments from Silver Pine Logistics routed to an account under SR Holdings. SR for Scott Reynolds. I remembered when we were kids. We used to scratch those initials into tree trunks, pretending it stood for strong and ready. Now it stood for snake and rat. I didn't call him. Didn't curse. Didn't ask why. Some betrayals don't deserve confrontation. They deserve eradication. I handed the findings to my attorney. Scott's name was added to the lawsuit alongside Amy and Evan. Criminal charges followed. One by one, they all crumbled. Amy. Her lover. Evan. Scott. The woman I loved. The family I trusted. The friend I called brother. Ashes. Now, I work alone. No dispatch. No team drivers. No friends riding shotgun. Just Charlotte and me, hauling freight through empty highways where the only sound is tires against asphalt and the occasional hum of a song I don't bother to finish. At night, I lift. I run. I update my spreadsheets. And I stare out the window at the world they thought they could take from me. But they never understood. They thought betrayal would end me. They mistook the fall for the end. I rose. Forged by fire. Unbreakable. The end.